Tennessee Wildcast is live on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Wildcast. I'm Jason Harmon, and got Mr. Matt Cameron with me today. He's co-hosting, helping me out, and Mr. Dan Gibbs, our Black Bear program leader for Tennessee. Thank y'all for being here. We are live on location in Gatlinburg, so this is pretty cool. We're not in Studio B today, and I like getting out whenever I can. And thanks for letting us come to your all's area.
We'll do it more often.
Yeah, Matt, he's Region 4 Information Specialist, and he does a lot of work out here keeping the public informed, and we're going to do more shows with him. He's going to help me co-host some more, and we're going to be out here in this area. And today we're going to be talking about bear hunting. We talked about being bear wise and just bears in general a few weeks ago, and today we're going to be talking about bear hunting and get all the details on that and what all is involved with bear hunting. So first, Dan's going to give us a little history. Okay. We've been bear hunting in Tennessee for quite a while, and I think we stopped at some point, closed down the season, and then we brought it back. So anyway, give us a brief history on how bear hunting has gone in Tennessee.
So if you go back into the records that we have records back into the 50s of bear harvest, and typically it was in the teens, sometimes 20, 30 bears, and then in the late 60s, most of the harvest was going to be in either what we called Tellico, which was going to be Monroe County, and also that included Polk County. And, we're getting down to just a few bears a year. So in 1970, the agency at the time, which was Game and Fish, closed the bear season for 3 years, and then started having some significant meetings with adjacent states, primarily of Georgia and North Carolina at the time. And it was called the Tri-State Bear Study. And that was a pretty significant thing for bears in this part of the world, because there were some issues identified. Number one was a law enforcement issue and all the illegal hunting that was going on. So each state ramped up their law enforcement and working the bears, and that was definitely a big deal. Number two was establishment of bear reserves and trying to have a core population that was protected. So if you did have a year where you had a lot of movement of bears and you did have an overharvest, you still had a core population. And that's pretty significant, because even up till the last few years, and we'll talk about this more in a few minutes, getting a good handle on your bear population, the science just wasn't there to be able to know exactly how many animals you had. So it was good to have that safety net of the bear reserves. And then the third thing was the timing of the hunts, we learned if you had later hunts in December, usually your females would go to den in late November, early December. So if you were hunting later in the year, you're keying your hunting on your harvest on your male bears versus your female bears, which protected them and gave them more of an opportunity to reproduce and have cubs. And those three things really made a difference. And now we're averaging about 450 bears a year.
And the population is still growing.
The population is growing. Now, the conversation is, what can we do to harvest more bears? If we could, a 600 bear harvest would be no problem for our population. We've had conversations about, are our hunters, the way these seasons are structured right now, capable of killing that many because of the timing and things like that, number of days. So that's one thing that we've been working on, is some things to give us some better data and how to develop those hunts.
Let me chime in here a second.
Yeah.
So the bear reserves have done so well that we actually have problems in bear reserves where they're private lands. And we're actually having a special hunt this year. Do you care to talk about that special hunt? Tell people how it's going to go?
Right. One thing, without jumping ahead just yet, I mentioned the population study that we're doing. And Tennessee has partnered with North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia, and we've been doing a DNA study to get some density estimates for the whole southern Appalachians. And part of that has been to give us an idea of how many bears we actually have. That will be a piece of data that we've really never had before, and it will allow us to do some different things. Because
now it's just a guesstimate. We say, 6,500, 7,000 bears?
Most of your bear estimates are based on, it's called reconstruction. You use what you kill in your harvest, but A lot of bears aren't harvestable due to where they're at, their habits, if they're way up in the mountains and things like that. So we've always believed it's going to be higher than those numbers, but to have a figure to be able to make those arguments is going to be nice. But so once we get those numbers, then we'll be evaluating how we're going to develop our seasons in the future and where we're going to hunt, how the bear reserves fall into that. But we have got some significant issues in the bear reserves. When those bear reserves were developed, like in Johnson County, we talk about now Johnson County has been discovered, and a lot more people have moved to Johnson County, and there's more people that live in those bear reserves. So things that really weren't a big deal before now are because of the number of people living there. So this year we've opened up 2 of the bear reserves to a 3-day hunt each, just to evaluate what kind of harvest we're going to have. It's only on private land.
So hunters have to have permission from the landowner before they go in there.
They have to have permission from the landowner before they go in there and hunt those bears. And the Forest Service is open to expanding that to the Forest Service in the future, but they are waiting on those numbers from that estimate, which they'll feel more comfortable with that. In this hunt, to ensure that we don't over-harvest, basically we are utilizing we looked at how many bears we're harvesting per square mile on private land and on public land within the county, and we set quotas based on that. So if we harvest a certain number of bears in those reserves earlier than the 3 days, then we're going to close it early, just to ensure that we don't go in there and have a lot of bears harvested that we don't want to be harvested at this time.
And all those bears, if a hunter takes one, has to physically check it in at a checking station.
Yeah.
They cannot check them in on the app.
That is correct. And this year we are opening that up for people to be able to utilize the app to check in bears, except for this hunt. And this hunt, and you can get in the hunting guide and see the location for those, but they will have to bring those bears to a physical check station so we can make sure we're getting an accurate count of how many are being harvested, and also get some biological data off those animals.
So to clarify, and I'll shut up here a second.
You're good.
But in the past, a hunter, if he harvested a black bear, was not allowed to check it in on the app.
Correct.
During the regular season. But this year, new law says you can do that,
Right.
correct?
Right, and we're going to try that out. A little concerned about getting the teeth. We use the teeth to age the bear, and they have to be sectioned. It's almost like a tree. You section it, stain it, and they count the rings. So we're really encouraging people to please submit those teeth. You look at our hunting guide, look on our website, and to show you how to pull the tooth. We even have this is the envelope we made for our officers to carry around, but you can see we're also going to start taking measurements off the bear, a length measurement and a girth measurement, and we can use these 2 measurements to get a pretty good idea of how much the bear weighs. Weighing a bear is a pretty tough thing, especially if people have it strapped to an ATV or something. Getting it out and getting it on scales, the floor scales are hard to handle. So this estimate gives us a pretty good idea of what they're weighing without having to go through all that. So we really appreciate hunters taking the time to give us those teeth. It's very important.
And the information for that, tnwildlife.org, or if you've got one of our hunting guides, you can open up to page 37. But on our website, the hunting guide's there. It's always up to date. We make sure it is the most current information and all the information on how to do that. Real quick, can you explain how do you extract that? I mean, just to
I know there's a link.
Probably
on
hard
here.
to talk about, but easier to show.
There's a link on here too that Matt and I put together a few years ago. We're actually video showing how to take that tooth. But basically, It's a premolar. It's going to be just behind the canine. And the thing where people usually mess up is they try to reach in there with a pair of wire pliers and just grab that tooth and pull it. And you're probably going to break it if you do that. You got to reach down there and take usually a good knife, a hunting knife or something, and kind of get down in there and kind of pry it a little bit, and use that canine for leverage to kind of break it loose, for lack of a better word. It's still going to stay in there, but once you feel it come out of that socket, then you can take the pliers and pull it out and cut the flesh at that point, and just throw it in the envelope.
And is there some incentive for doing this year?
Yeah, I'm going to give this a try, but we decided this year we're going to see if a hat would encourage people to send it in. So we've got a hat we're trying to design. I'm not going to say what that is yet.
It's cool.
Just in
I
case
want one.
Something goes bad and we can't do it, but we've got a pretty good design that we're wanting to put out there. So anyone that sends a tooth.
Does it have to be a bear's tooth?
It has to be a bear tooth.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
But one thing that's very important, one of the I guess the drawbacks of our reel system is people don't go in and routinely change their address when they move. So a lot of those addresses on our system are not good addresses. And if a hunter just puts in their ID number and doesn't put an address on that form that's a good address, I can't guarantee they're going to get that hat. So make sure that that's filled out and it's legible. And those won't be coming out. We're not going to trade you a hat for a tooth. We got to figure out how many we need to order and things like that. So that'll be a springtime project where we get those out.
Great. Cool. Awesome. Well, let's look at the hunting guide. It's on page 36. Is where bear hunting stuff starts, and let's highlight some of the zones.
Okay.
This I don't know if it has been 2 or 3 years ago. We opened up a few more zones, and
we kind of redid the bear seasons 3 or 4 years ago, and our zones 1, 2, and 3 are what we call our traditional zones. That's going to be your counties that border North Carolina,
okay.
and most of it's Cherokee National Forest, and they're divided out by basically differences in the area, the way the National Forest is broken up. On the north end, the National Forest is very fragmented, a lot of private property. Within the National Forest, you get on the South Cherokee, and it's almost completely one unit of land. So that has a lot of difference in how the bears move and the accessibility of the bears and timing. The South Cherokee also has some traditional party hunts that are a little bit different. That's the only place we have those. And then you get into Sevier and Blount County and the south end of Cott County. The national park is a big part of that zone, and obviously there's no hunting in there. So timing on those hunts is really critical to take advantage of when bears are not in the park, because that's when they'll be harvestable. And then you have the transitional zone, which borders all those counties, and that zone is there primarily just to give landowners some relief if there's some nuisance issues going on in the late summer, early fall. It's archery season. We haven't had a lot of bears harvested there, but it does give us an idea of where we're seeing more bears. Like last year, we had 3 harvested in Hawkins County, and that kind of confirms, reports that we're getting for bears. And then our last zone is the Plateau, Zone 4, which is the northern plateau, and that's our newest population of bears. And the core of that population is going to be the Big South Fork. And we did the density estimate there in 2013, and we had a little over 200 bears estimated to be on the Tennessee side. North Kentucky did the same thing a few years earlier, and their density estimates weren't anywhere near what ours were. So we felt comfortable with opening up some archery opportunity in that zone. And the Big South Fork is not open to that, so it's kind of serving as our bear reserve right now for that hunt. And in 2019, we'll be going back in and reproducing that survey to see what kind of growth we've had, or if this hunt has been enough to stabilize that. But I don't believe it has. It's still growing.
I remember seeing on social media when we opened up that last zone, that Zone 4, and folks were like, "Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this."
Right.
First bear taking off this area.
Right, and it's we're going to see more of that. People are asking us, when are you going to open up this county to transitional? And our transitional zone was basically the key there is pretty much in all those cases except for Granger, it's a county that's bordering a county that's open. And then Hancock is there because of Virginia, a lot of bears in that Virginia area.
Okay.
And then same thing down here with Georgia, bears in North Georgia. So those counties are really counties where we expect to see bears on a fairly regular basis in years of low mass, and as those ideally either those transitional zones will turn into another hunt unit like a unit 5, or they'll be absorbed into one of the existing units as we move westward with our hunting and see these areas expand.
Now remember, all this is in your hunting guide, page 36, the dates, the type of weapon allowed, whether dogs are allowed or not. I'm new to, I've never been bear hunting. So people watching at home, maybe never been, and they hear party hunt, and they hear, is it like a
dog
deer hunt,
steel hunt,
still hunt? Explain and help them understand what's the difference between a party hunt. How do you get into the party, and is there music, or what's all involved in the party?
The party hunt is really, it would take an entire show to explain that, but it goes way back, and it goes back to the time when we had hunting clubs were a lot bigger deal for us.
Okay.
And you had groups of hunters that had clubs that met every week and they got together.
And there's still clubs out there,
They're
right?
still there, but there's not many.
Okay.
But these clubs would want to go on a bear hunt, but they weren't houndsmen. So the agency developed a system where they could go and get drawn for a hunt, and they could add on some houndsmen, people that had dogs, to come hunt with them, and they would utilize their dogs. And that's why it's called the party hunt. So but that's a really big deal down in that part of the world, and they really enjoy those. And that party for that 2 days, they're the only ones that are allowed to be in that area, so they have it all to themselves. And
wow.
So that's it's nice for them to be able to do that, and they really enjoy that. But you never had really a need for that anywhere else. But hound hunting makes up 90% or better of our harvest. It's a very important part of our bear hunting tradition, and it's we rely on it heavily to harvest the number of bears we need because, if you get into some areas that you don't have the mountainous areas and a lot of private land, you can do pretty well with still hunting and get a decent harvest. But when you're getting into hundreds of thousands of acres of national forest and the terrain, you got to utilize those hounds. They can get to those bears and get them moving. And even with hounds, there's bears that we talk about. There's just certain portions of your population that's just not going to be accessible to hunting. We'll have a bear. Last year we had a bear show up in Maryville, and the officers trapped her, and she was tagged, and that bear was tagged when I was in college.
Wow.
At UT over 20 years ago. That bear was tagged and had been in the Smokies that long, and she just got up deep in the Smokies and lived her life there. And, no one ever saw anything of her again till, had a poor mass crop, and she got to moving looking for food and showed up. So there's a large percentage of bears that are like that get out there and you're never going to be able to get to them with hunting, even with hounds.
Speaking of mast, what are you seeing on acorns this year in hickory nuts?
It's looking pretty good from what I've seen. I always kind of gauge. My first gauge is that big oak tree at the office that we all stumbled over.
Trip and fall.
If we're walking on marbles. But I've been looking at that tree, and it looks like there's quite a few acorns in there. I got a chestnut oak at the house that's got quite a few nuts on it. So
that's a good thing.
We're starting
for wildlife.
And a lot of it's elevation based too. You get up at the higher elevations to see what's up there. You really want to see good mass production at your higher elevations. It keeps the bears from coming down this way to
out of trouble
look for food. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of, let's back up to the reserves. You were talking about the reserves areas. I'm not familiar with where those are and what the boundaries are for those. So explain a reserve.
Well, we've got 6 bear reserves, and if you include the national park in Big South Fork, then it would be 8 bear reserves. But they were developed years ago when they began to open a new area, like when Carter and Sullivan and Johnson County were first going to be open to bear hunting. They went in and created these bear reserves to, once again, as we mentioned earlier, they're designed to have a core population that's protected.
Genius.
Yeah. So, and there's roads, highways, state line, whatever it may be. We have our Kettlefoot Bear Reserve, which is going to be in Johnson and Carter, or Johnson and Sullivan County, in the Shady Valley area. Then you've got Laurel Fork, which is in Carter County, and butts up against North Carolina. Andrew Johnson is in the Green County, butts against North Carolina. And then the fourth one up that way would be Unicoi, which is in Unicoi and Greene County, and it also butts up against North Carolina. So 3 of those 4 butt up against North Carolina. Then you get down into Monroe County. You had the Tellico and the Coe Bear Reserves, and Monroe's Tellico and Coe's in Polk County.
Okay.
And once again, those reserves are against state lines. And then, of course, North Carolina has their reserves as well. And, that's one thing that was important about our bear survey is including North Carolina and Georgia, because bears that are in Tennessee today can be in North Carolina tomorrow and vice versa. So it truly is a population that's, moves from state to state. So it was important for us to work together to get those numbers. So
would you say that Virginia and North Carolina probably have more bears than we do in
Absolutely.
Tennessee?
Absolutely.
They kill a bunch of bears and still have a bunch. So
when you look at a topo map, it's pretty obviously why. Even though we've got our mountains and we got a lot of them, when you start running up the interstate and you get into Greene County especially, in Washington County, there's not a whole lot of Cherokee National Forest in those 2 counties, and it expands out when you get back up to Johnson and Carter and down Monroe and Polk. But when you look at North Carolina, how much more what we consider quality habitat they have for bears. And then they also have the coastal population as well.
They're
which
big
is
on
a
the coast too, right?
That's a whole nother issue, coastal bears, which you can get into North Carolina on that coast, and also the South Coast in Louisiana and places like that. So they have a lot of bears in North Carolina. Virginia considers their state 100% occupied.
100%.
So there's a lot of bears in West Virginia, and we're going to continue to see the number in Tennessee go up. I don't know that we'll ever get to where those states are. Probably don't want to be there.
Don't want to be there, I don't think.
Yeah, from a conflict issue, we don't want to be there. But our bear population is growing in Tennessee, moving west, and we're not moving bears to encourage that by translocating bears to give it a boost, but we're not trying to stop it either. We'll let Mother Nature do her thing, and if bears take hold and do well in another place, then we'll welcome that. And it comes with its issues. It comes with responsibility for the folks of the state that live there. But,
Sure.
Overall, the state of Tennessee and the people who live here overwhelmingly support bears. We've done surveys to show that. And they support bear hunting as well. So.
Out of all the animals that we manage, I can't think of any other bear that captures the hearts and the minds, or any other animal that captures the hearts and minds of people than a black bear. It seems like everyone from hunters to non-hunters to anti-hunters, everyone loves bears in some capacity. So it seems like the decisions we make affect pretty much everyone. Most people, I don't care about a largemouth bass or a white-tailed deer or whatever, but a bear, we all love them.
Right. And people, like I said, they support hunting as long as they know that the agency is keeping an eye on the animals and doing a good job of making sure we're not over-harvesting. And that's what this whole project we've been doing the last 2 years is about, to ensure that we are protecting the resource for the state.
It's a huge success story. If you go back, to the early 20th century when there were hardly any bears because of the chestnut blight and land use changes, over-harvesting. And you went through that down period that you talked about when they only killed a few a year, and now we've got them, coming out our ears. So it is a great success story if you look at it overall.
Speaking of harvest, and not to jump around too much, but it looks like you're allowed one bear a year.
Right.
Okay.
And and that's something we actually the bear reserve hunt is going to be what a lot of people, hunters, we know as a bonus bear.
Okay.
So it will not count towards that, and that's another tool that we'll be looking at. I actually was talking with someone about that today, about how do you, if you got an area where you're not reaching your harvest goals, how can you get people down there to that? I mean, if we wanted to kill more bears, say in zone 3, how can we get people from zone 2 or 1 to go to zone 3 and hunt? Because a lot of people, it's kind of territorial and they kind of stick to their own area and don't move around a lot. But if in the future we decide we need to get people down there, additional bear out of that zone may encourage people to move around, and it may be worth their while that we then go down there and take another bear, not count towards their one bear limit. So there's a lot of tools in the box there that we haven't utilized yet, and we'll be taking a look at all of that as we move forward once we get this population data in.
And clear up one thing for people. When we brought up this bear reserve hunt, can you make it clear that it's because of great nuisance issues in certain private areas of those bear reserves?
And
that's why we're having it.
I guess that's the best way to put it. This is kind of a stopgap to give some folks some relief till we make a determination about what our long-term plans are for those bear reserves.
Without taking too many at one time.
Without taking too many at one time. Like I said, the public wants us to ensure that we're doing a good job and we're not over harvesting, and we want to make sure that everything we're doing is with science and with data. So it's just a small
easing our way into it.
Easing our way into it. We're letting folks know that we are taking it seriously. We know there's an issue that needs to be addressed, but as an agency, we have to be able to back up what we recommend for long-term stuff, and that's what we're doing. And
it's been well thought through.
Yeah, and we can't rush that. I mean, North Carolina, we did our work last summer, but it's such a huge project, and University of Tennessee is heading that up. It just wasn't feasible for them to be able to do all 4 states in 1 year. So they did North Carolina this year, and all that data has to be analyzed. DNA analyzation is not something that you can just snap your fingers and it's done. It takes time. So hopefully by our next season setting process, which will be 2020, we'll be working on it in 2020, yes. we'll have all that data ready to roll and make some recommendations for that 2020 season.
Because we're setting regulations every 2 years now,
That's
as opposed to
correct.
every year, right?
That's
I don't know if the
correct.
public knows that and understands
Right.
that. And with fishing 1 year and then hunting the next. Is
Yes.
that how it works?
Yeah. We're out
Fishing is this next year will be a single year setting time, and then they'll start the 2 year rotation. Yep.
Okay.
And we're going to run out of time, but back to hunting. Say if you're new to hunting, is it just like deer? There's no baiting for bears, correct?
No.
And then you say party hunt, but what if somebody wants to go? Say me and you want to go together. Can we go together? If I've harvested a bear already, can I go with you?
Yes, you can. And
Okay.
I get a lot of calls from Middle Tennessee, and I feel bad because I feel like I'm talking people out of going hunting.
Uh-huh.
But it's very difficult to just drive up to East Tennessee,
Right.
park your car at a parking area on North Cherokee or South Cherokee, and go out and harvest a bear. I mean, they're hard to pattern. Like I said, 90% more of them are harvested with the use of hounds.
Mm-hmm.
On public land, it's almost 100% are harvested with the use of hounds. Very few are harvested with steel hunting. Most of the steel hunting is coming off private property where people are seeing bears at the same time on a regular basis, and they're able to take them. But
Right.
there's pretty high demand for bear hunting on private property. And when we first started that archery hunt, it was designed for deer hunters and some incidental take, hoping that they would take a few bears that they happen to see while they were deer hunting. But now we're seeing more and more people that are actually they're targeting bears for that hunt rather than deer. And so finding a place to just go hunt, we just don't have a list of places that people can go. So I'd encourage folks, if they're interested in bear hunting, try to make some contacts in counties that have bears and look for some private property. That's going to be your best bet.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has all been great information. If you've never been bear hunting or want to get into bear hunting, check your hunting guide. Make sure you read up on those regulations
Right.
and those dates and what you can and can't do.
Yeah, there's also some minimum weights in shooting cubs, females with cubs next to them and things like that you need to
Okay.
be aware of, and it's all in the hunting guide.
Yeah.
So,
Good point.
Awesome. And then if you're a regular bear hunter and you harvest this year, make sure you visit our website and find that information on how to check one in, how to extract that tooth and do those measurements, and we really appreciate all that. And then you get you a free hat.
Yep.
From what I hear, we'll see what happens. But I appreciate y'all for being with us, and thanks for helping us out, Matt, and
Heck yeah.
helping me co-host.
Thank
and
you for having me.
I've enjoyed our visit here in Gatlinburg.
It's fairing up.
It's a great view. It's time for dinner, I think.
yes.
Like a bear now.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this edition of Tennessee Wildcast, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee Wildcast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.